I honestly, once you leave something, and there are other issues, I can't really talk about.
Simon Cowell is saying goodbye, and the reason has left fans stunned after years of silence from Courtney Hadwin, one of America's Got Talent's most unforgettable voices. Troubling reports are now surfacing. Whispers of tragic diagnosis, sudden cancellations, and Simon noticeably shaken. This isn't just another celebrity headline. It's something deeper, something Jesse Waters briefly acknowledged before the clip was pulled. What happened between the rising star and the man who once called her a phenomenon? Why now? And why the silence? The truth behind this story is unraveling fast, and what we've uncovered so far is shocking. A voice unlike any other. When Courtney Hadwin first stepped onto the stage of America's Got Talent, the crowd didn't know what to expect. A shy teenager with shaky hands and eyes darting nervously across the judges' table. She barely made a sound during her brief introduction. She mentioned being from a small town in England, and when asked who her favorite artist was, she quietly muttered names like Janis Joplin and James Brown. The moment was almost awkward, like watching someone try to find their footing in a world far bigger than they expected. But the second the music started, everything changed. With Otis Redding's Hard to Handle blasting through the speakers, Courtney transformed in real time. Gone was the soft-spoken girl, and in her place stood a powerhouse performer channeling a kind of raw, almost untamed energy that seemed far beyond her years. The audience erupted. Simon Cowell's expression shifted from cautious curiosity to complete disbelief. He leaned forward, his eyes wide, his mouth slightly open, as if trying to figure out how such a voice was coming from someone so young and unassuming. The performance didn't just go viral. It exploded. Within hours, clips were circulating across every corner of the internet. Fans and musicians alike were stunned. Who was this girl with the awkward posture and the soul of the 60s rock legend? The reactions weren't just hype. Courtney's voice had grit, soul, and something rare, a complete lack of self-consciousness. She didn't just sing the notes. She lived them. Simon's comment after performance said it all. "You're not from this era," he told her, almost in awe. "You're from a whole other world." He wasn't exaggerating. It wasn't the kind of feedback given out for drama or effect. Simon, who had seen thousands of hopefuls, knew the difference between talent and something that defies explanation. And Courtney, in that moment, was the latter. That season on AGT became a whirlwind for her. She didn't win the final prize, but in many ways, she didn't need to. Her name was already etched in the minds of viewers across the world. She returned for America's Got Talent, the champions, facing off against seasoned acts and international performers. And once again, she held her ground. But while the public cheered, behind the scenes, Courtney remained something of an enigma. Unlike many young stars who rushed to seize the spotlight, she didn't seem hungry for fame. She rarely gave interviews. She posted on social media, but kept it minimal and mostly music-focused. Her presence online was controlled, deliberate, and sometimes completely absent. And yet, her fans stayed loyal. They followed her journey through original singles, covers, and rare public appearances, waiting for the next time she'd emerge with something new. In the years that followed, many wonder where that spark came from. Courtney didn't have formal training. She didn't come from a showbiz family. What she had, according to producers and mentors who worked with her, was an instinct, a kind of emotional memory that poured out in every performance. Some speculated it was a gift. Others said it was more than that. It was something she couldn't control, something that used her as much as she used it. Simon Cowell, even years later, would occasionally refer to her in interviews. Never in detail, never with big headlines, but with phrases like, "that one performance I'll never forget," or "she was lightning in a bottle." He didn't need to say her name. People already knew who he meant. Courtney Hadwin may have been discovered on a reality show stage, but what she brought to it felt timeless. And as the spotlight slowly shifted and years went by, something else began to happen, a quiet change, one that wouldn't be obvious at first, but would soon raise new questions about what really happened after the curtain fell. The bond that formed off camera long after the lights dimmed on the America's Got Talent stage. People were still talking about Courtney Hadwin, but the real story, the one that never made headlines, might have started once the cameras stopped rolling. It was there, away from the applause and golden confetti, that something quiet but important began to form, a connection between a rising star and a man who had seen it all. Simon Cowell has been known for many things over the years. Brutally honest judge, industry power broker, reluctant mentor. But every once in a while, someone comes along who breaks through that sharp exterior. With Courtney, it wasn't just her voice that did it. It was her strangeness, her refusal to play the fame game, her awkward brilliance. She wasn't trying to be a pop star. She didn't want to be molded. That, more than anything, caught Simon's attention. According to people close to the show, Simon invited Courtney and her family to his home not long after her first AGT appearance. It wasn't part of some media stunt or show deal. It was quiet, under the radar, and entirely off the books. What was said in that meeting remains private, but one thing became clear soon after. Courtney had signed with Psycho Music, Simon's own label. It wasn't a typical contract. Insiders described it as more protective than commercial. Unlike other young artists who get swept up in relentless recording schedules, Courtney's deal gave her time. She wasn't pressured to tour or release a debut album immediately. Instead, she was given space to explore, to find her voice in a world that suddenly expected her to have everything figured out. Behind the scenes, Simon reportedly became something of a guide, not in the overly involved way you might expect, but more like a quiet supporter. He kept tabs on her progress. He occasionally reached out. There were even whispers that he'd personally blocked some proposed media deals that felt exploitative. In a world that moves fast and forgets faster, Simon didn't forget Courtney. But as her fame grew, so did the pressure. People wanted to know more. Why wasn't she posting? Why were there so few interviews? Where was the album? There was no meltdown, no scandal, just silence. Months passed, then years, and Courtney only appeared in brief flashes. An original song here, a small performance there. She released music, but on her own terms, never chasing trends, never explaining why she disappeared in between. Some believed she had lost interest. Others assumed she had grown tired of the spotlight. But among those who had worked closely with her, there was a different understanding. They said Courtney was always different, always moved by something else. That whatever drove her to sing in the first place didn't come from the outside. It came from somewhere far more personal, far more complicated. And through it all, Simon stayed unusually quiet. He wasn't promoting her the way he had with other acts. He wasn't posting about her successes or hyping her appearances. But whenever her name came up in interviews, his tone would shift. He didn't need to say much. A pause, a glance, a single sentence like, "She's unforgettable." It was enough to make people wonder. Was this just a mentor keeping a respectful distance? Or was there something deeper going on behind the scenes? Wyatt Simon, a man known for moving quickly from one act to the next, never truly let go of Courtney Hadwin. Why did his support for her seem more personal, more protective? Whatever the reason, one thing was becoming clear. Their bond wasn't typical. It wasn't about publicity or ratings. It felt like something else entirely. And in recent months, subtle signs began to emerge that this quiet connection between them might have taken on a new, more emotional weight. Something had shifted. Something he wasn't ready to speak about, at least not yet. Disappearances and whispers. Courtney Hadwin didn't vanish overnight. It was more of a fade, the kind you only notice once you stop seeing her name in headlines or hearing new music in your feed. At first, it didn't seem unusual. Artists take breaks. They regroup, especially ones who blow up young. But as the months stretched into years, fans began to notice something was different. This wasn't a typical hiatus. This was something quieter, harder to find, and far more unsettling. After her success on America's Got Talent, The Champions, Courtney released a few singles, each raw, emotional, and completely true to her style. Songs like Breakable and Happy Christmas gave fans just enough to hold on to. But there was no album, no tour, no press cycle. She was there, and then she wasn't. And when she did post on social media, it was brief, a grainy photo, a lyric with no caption, a thank you post with comments disabled. At first, people blamed label politics. Maybe she was caught in a contract dispute. Maybe she was waiting out a better deal. But that theory faded when psycho music dissolved. With Simon Cowell stepping back from the label, Courtney, like many artists, quietly moved on. Yet instead of springing into independence, she seemed to shrink even further from view. Fans started asking questions. Reddit threads popped up with titles like, "Where's Courtney Hadwin?" or "Is she okay?" Some thought she'd retired young. Others believed she was simply done with fame. But there were signs, little ones, that something else was happening. Posts would vanish without explanation. Comments would hint at being in a battle or taking time to heal. And then there were the lyrics. Her newer songs, released quietly on platforms like YouTube and Spotify, took on more confessional tone. One track in particular featured the line, "If I told you everything, you'd never hear me the same way again." Another ended with a whisper repetition of the word goodbye. For most artists, this would pass unnoticed. But for someone as private as Courtney, it raised alarms. Some fans tried to reach out, leaving supportive comments, encouraging her to keep fighting or come back stronger. Others speculated that she was facing something far more serious than burnout or artistic fatigue. Theories ranged from personal tragedy to undisclosed illness. No one had answers, and Courtney wasn't offering any. Then came a video, a short, blurry clip filmed at what appeared to be a small local venue. Courtney was performing, her voice still as powerful as ever but noticeably thinner, fragile. Afterward, she didn't stay to meet fans. She left through the back, escorted by someone who looked more like a nurse than a manager. The clip circulated briefly before being taken down. Around the same time, a blog post began circulating from someone claiming to have worked on her early music sessions. It included a vague reference to a private health matter that had interrupted her plans. Though it didn't say more, the post was deleted within days. Through all of this, Simon Cowell remained silent. He hadn't posted about Courtney in years. But then, out of nowhere, he canceled a scheduled appearance at a London talent showcase. The official statement cited personal reasons. It was small, easy to overlook, but those paying attention couldn't help but notice the timing. The whispers grew louder. Something was happening, and while no one could say for certain what it was, the pattern was becoming impossible to ignore. She wasn't just stepping away from the spotlight. She was disappearing from everything. And Simon, usually so composed, so forward-facing, seemed to be backing away too. It was all speculation, of course, nothing confirmed. No press statements, no interviews, just rumors, fragments, and a growing sense of unease. But the silence was starting to sound like a message, something no one wanted to say out loud. This is shocking. In early reports that began circulating quietly online, a phrase appeared again and again, one that no one seemed ready to believe. Courtney Hadwin has reportedly received a tragic diagnosis. No official statement, no direct confirmation, just that single unsettling line echoing across forums, comment sections, and private fan groups. And what made it all the more devastating wasn't just what was being said. It was who was being mentioned alongside her. According to multiple unverified sources, Simon Cowell has been saying goodbye. Yes, according to reports, Simon Cowell is saying goodbye after Courtney Hadwin's tragic diagnosis. But this was a goodbye in a public way, not with announcements or press releases, but in the way someone steps back when words fail, in the way someone close enough to know the truth starts pulling away from the spotlight, because continuing as usual no longer feels possible. Some claim that Simon was seen leaving a private residence in tears. Others described him as looking drained and visibly shaken. At a recent industry dinner, he reportedly turned down 2 major television appearances, including a scheduled reunion segment for AGT. Those close to the situation say it wasn't professional fatigue. It was something more emotional, something that hit him deeply, something that, if true, would explain everything. The diagnosis itself remains unnamed in every version of the story. Some say it's neurological. Others believe it may be related to a rare autoimmune condition. A few have even suggested it's terminal. But none of these claims are supported by medical records or direct statements from Courtney or her family. Still, the way Simon has reacted, the change in his schedule, his tone, his uncharacteristic silence, has given weight to the rumors. And that's where the shock truly begins to settle in. It's not just that a young, gifted artist might be facing something tragic. is that someone like Simon Cowell, a man who has built a career out of staying in control, suddenly isn't. For a figure so tightly woven into machinery of the music industry, these kinds of emotional cracks are rare, almost unheard of, which is why this shift, subtle as it may be, has people talking. This is shocking. One longtime associate reportedly said, Simon's been through a lot. Scandals, career setbacks, health issues of his own, but nothing ever seemed to shake him quite like this. That quote, attributed to someone close to the Cowell circle, has since been removed from the original blog post where it appeared, but screenshots exist and they've been shared widely. There are no hospital photos, no leaked documents, no official updates, just rumors and reactions. And yet, despite the lack of proof, the emotional signals are hard to dismiss. Courtney's own social media accounts have gone completely dark. No updates in months. Her YouTube channel, once a place of sporadic creativity, has been dormant. No live streams. No covers. Nothing. One fan wrote, "It's like she's saying goodbye without saying it." Another commented, "She gave us everything she had. Maybe that's all she could give." The reality is, no one knows for sure, but something has clearly changed. Simon's silence, usually strategic, now feels personal. His absence from events where he was once a fixture is being noticed. And the word goodbye, when attached to someone like Courtney Hadwin, suddenly feels much heavier than it should. Whether this is all speculation or the beginning of a devastating truth remains uncertain. But the weight of these quiet exits, the unfinished songs, the vanishing posts, and the tears that reportedly followed, suggests something profound. If even part of it is true, it's more than just a loss for music. It's a personal heartbreak for the man who first gave Courtney her stage, a man who may now be stepping back not from the industry, but from someone he once believed was untouchable. And if this is his way of saying goodbye, then the silence may be speaking louder than anything else ever could, a wave of support and silence. In the days after the rumors began to spread, something shifted across Courtney Hadwin's corner of the internet. It wasn't outrage. It wasn't chaos. It was something gentler but just as loud, an outpouring of support. Comments flooded old videos. Messages of love and strength appeared in posts from years ago. Fans weren't demanding answers. They were sending hope, as if she could feel it wherever she was. Stay Strong Courtney began trending quietly in pockets of social media, not pushed by influencers or celebrity reposts, but by ordinary people who remembered how her voice once made them feel. People wrote things like, "You helped me get to my own pain," or, "Even if we don't hear from you again, you've already said more than most ever could." It wasn't just fandom anymore. It was gratitude, grief, maybe, but wrapped in something tender. Despite the growing noise online, there was still no word from Courtney herself. No Instagram story. No cryptic tweet. Not even a like or repost. Her digital footprint went completely still. And for someone already known for being private, the silence carried weight. It felt intentional, like someone quietly stepping back from a conversation they no longer wanted to be part of. What surprised many, though, was the silence from Simon Cowell. The man known for speaking blunt truths had become invisible. A few fans pointed out that he had been unusually absent from recent press junkets and red carpet events. Scheduled appearances were quietly canceled. His own social media posts, normally promotional and upbeat, had slowed to a trickle. When asked about his absence during a brief public encounter outside a London restaurant, Simon reportedly responded with a soft, "Some things are more important right now," before walking away. The video was only a few seconds long, but the way he looked, tired, distant, maybe even heartbroken, sparked another wave of concern. And yet, even amid this growing wave of worry, there were no official statements, no clarification from Courtney's team, no denial, no confirmation, just a vacuum where answers should have been. Some believed the silence was strategic, a way to maintain privacy. Others saw it as a kind of emotional shielding, protecting Courtney from the harshness of headlines, while Simon himself processed something he couldn't speak about. Music blogs tried to piece together a timeline. They noted the last time Courtney was seen in public, the last post she liked, the last interview she gave, Nothing conclusive emerged, just small details that only deepened the mystery. Someone even pointed out that her last original release had a cover photo that featured a hospital bracelet, barely visible on her wrist. No one had noticed it before. Now it felt like a clue. Even Courtney's fellow contestants from AGT began to speak up, if only briefly. One of them posted, "Thinking about Courtney today. Hope you're finding peace in whatever you're going through." It wasn't a confirmation of anything, but it was another signal, another ripple in the water. In moments like this, silence becomes its own language. And in Courtney's case, it started to feel like her absence was saying more than any official update ever could. Fans weren't demanding to know the truth anymore. They were bracing for it, hoping for a comeback, yes, but also preparing for something else, something they couldn't name yet. And Simon? He still hadn't said her name. Not once. But when an interviewer casually brought up AGT's most unforgettable auditions, Simon reportedly smiled sadly and said, "Some people never leave you." Not really. Then he moved on, as if the question had been too much. It's hard to know what's real in the middle of so much quiet, but one thing is certain. Whatever Courtney is facing, she's not alone. Not in spirit, not in memory, and not in the hearts of those who still play her songs, still feel her voice, and still wait for whatever comes next. The music never stops. Courtney Hadwin's voice was never about perfection. It cracked, it growled, it soared, always just on the edge of control. That was the magic. And maybe that's why, even now, even in her absence, people still hear her. Not on the charts or in stadiums, but in headphones, in quiet rooms, in moments when the world feels a little too heavy, and someone needs to remember what it means to feel something. As the silence continues, fans have returned to her earliest performances like sacred texts. Her first audition is watched like a time capsule, each frame examined for signs no one saw the first time. Her original songs, once interpreted as artistic expression, now feel like hidden messages. Breakable doesn't just sound vulnerable anymore. It hurts in a new way. It's as if every lyric has taken on a double meaning, one that no one noticed until the rumors started to spread. Simon Cowell, too, remains distant. There's talk that he's spending more time away from the spotlight, possibly reevaluating what comes next. He hasn't addressed the reports about Courtney directly, and maybe he never will. But for someone who has launched so many careers, this one seems to have followed him deeper than the rest. There's something haunting about that silence, the way he seems to be grieving something unspoken. Still, not everything feels like an ending. There's a quiet hope in the way her fans refuse to let go. They post old performances, write tributes, cover her songs. They speak of her as if she's still here, still recording, still about to surprise everyone with something new. And maybe that's not just wishful thinking. Because if Courtney taught the world anything, it's that you don't need permission to be unforgettable. You just need one moment, one song, one voice. Whether or not we ever hear that voice live again, it's already done something rare. It's carved itself into memory, the kind that doesn't fade. The story might remain unfinished, but the music, that part never really stops. What do you like the most about Courtney? Let us know in the comments.